Hi, everybody. I am back again. So glad to be back with all my little creepy friends. So we're going to give everybody a little bit of time to get the notifications, come in, get settled, grab your popcorn. Tonight's going to be a lot of fun. Mother Della Morte needs viewers' participation in this. So this is going to be fun. This is going to be kind of an interactive type feed. And I'm really super excited about this. I've been wanting to do this subject for a while. But the thing is this is a conceptual piece that we're doing tonight. And it's considered actually high conceptual because it has to do with psychology. And so there's no wrong answers in this. This is all purely personal perception. But I just found it fascinating. There's not a whole lot on these subjects other than maybe a couple of little things out there that have kind of been absorbed into creepypasta. But I still find it fascinating because with anything, I do like the mysterious part. Yes, there may be some woo-woo with it, but there's also a basis in psychology. So I think this is fun. I think we don't know everything. I think there's a lot of things out there that we probably will never know. And so it's fascinating how the mind works. So when you get in, yes, and warning, the content within this episode is intended to provoke thought. Viewer discretion is advised. So when you get in, let us know you're here. If you're new, let us know where you're from. We always love new victims here in the crypt. So looks like we have Ange here. Hi, Ange. And she says, hi, everybody. Nadine is here. Hi, Nadine. She says, hi. And then we have Mike. Hello, Mike. And he says, hello, everybody. So I'll go ahead and do a little bit of house cleaning while we're waiting for, it usually takes a couple of minutes for all these feeds to kind of get out there. And Akash says, hello, everybody. So we're so glad to have all our regulars here. And Ange says, you are not new here, Ange. Oh, my goodness. You may be new to my erratic feeds here lately. But you know what? That keeps everybody on their toes. So it's been a very, very busy here in the crypt. So a little bit of house cleaning. Again, like I always say, Ange says, just kidding. Channels that have a good organic reach, once they get to a certain tier, Facebook and a lot of the other big social medias make it very hard. I think the last information I saw was like we've got over 11,000 subscribers just to one of our pages alone, but only about 2 to 3% of our content gets out to those 11,000 even on that page alone. So we're probably getting close up to about a 50,000 followers, which is amazing on all our platforms. But very little of those supporters get our stuff on a regular basis. That's how these big social media places make their money. Hi, Calvin. Calvin says, hi, Odd Mother, because they want you to pay to play. So the absolute best thing that anybody can do for content creators and artists that you enjoy, that you dig, that you really like what they're doing and what they're having to say, is to share and support their content. So the best thing you can do, and it's absolutely free, is to share, share, share. So that out of the way, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. You can even do that directly from our website. Again, Facebook has changed how some of these notifications get out, and so I've had to go back several times and like redo all my notifications on certain pages and channels that I follow. YouTube seems to be a little bit more streamlined, so they're not quite as erratic. So if you don't get a notification here, you will get one on YouTube to let you know that we're here. And then Maud says, hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Please make sure to like, follow, and share. Smash that bell. Yes. And for some of our newer people, there are times when we do certain content that will either A, only be up on our websites, or B, will only be on YouTube and our websites. So it's good to be subscribed to our YouTube just in case we ever have to flip over. We've had to do that from time to time. Let's see, anything else? If you have a business group or product and are looking to advertise, PBDC TV now has limited sponsorship spaces available. You can reach us here through Facebook or through our website for more information. We have very reasonable rates, and we do a lot of special things for our paying supporters. You know, keep that in mind if you're looking to advertise a business that you have or something along those lines. Let's see, don't forget Eating Sundays, and I will go ahead and announce this, and I'll announce it again at the end. I myself, Mr. Gould from Gould Radio, and a couple of other of our content creators, not this weekend and maybe not this week, but next weekend, the holiday weekend for Thanksgiving, a lot of us are flying out to corporate office in Transylvania. So we will not be here next weekend. But never fear, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but we will be leaving the Bunnies of Chaos in control here at our satellite offices. And I think maybe some of Steve's staff may be here as well. So, but also understand that the Bunnies of Chaos do have something special holiday related for you guys next week. So we won't be dark. It's just most of the content creators will be out of country to go to our annual Creature Conference. So that's going to be exciting because what happens at the Creature Conference stays at the Creature Conference. So let's see what's going on in the comments. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get to our topic tonight. Let me pull this up. And then let's see what's going on with the comments. All right, so we have a lot of mods in the house. Hello, hello, mods. We have Calvin and Aka, Nadine, Mike. Nice. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. We've kind of been in here for a bit, so that's given time for all our notifications to go out. All right, so we're going to kind of, like I said, this is a conceptual piece. We're going to kind of go up and down through some rabbit holes. So what are thin places? And that's what we're going to start with tonight. Some of this information, it does come from thinplacetours.com, and you can find them on the World Wide Web. Oh, and I do need to do something really quick. I don't mean to kind of break my flow there, but I do need to do something very quickly. All right, so our legal mumbo jumbo out of the way. For educational purposes, that's what we do. So per 17 USC Code 107, US Code, unanointed Title 17, copyright 107, under the fair use, another artist or author may make a limited use of the original author's work without asking permission. Again, pursuant to 17 U.S. Code 107, certain uses of copyright material for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, including multiple copies for classrooms and scholarships or research, is not an infringement of copyright. So we've got that out of the way. I knew I was forgetting something. Okay, so some of this information does come from thinplacetours.com. Again, conceptual piece. So for the most part, I had to write this out of like my own head. Like this was a very, very hard topic to actually put on paper because it is so conceptual. All right, so thin places are places of energy, a place where the veil between the world and the eternal world is thin. A thin place is where one can walk into two worlds. The worlds are fused together, knitted loosely where the differences can be discerned, or tightly where the two worlds become one. Thin places aren't perceived with the five senses. Experience them goes beyond those limits. Fascination with the other world has occupied our human minds since the early recordings of history, and likely before that. A thin place pulsates with energy that connects with our own energy. We feel it, but we may not see it. We know there's another side, another world, another existence. To some, it's heaven, the kingdom, paradise. To others, it may be hell, the abyss, and the unknown. Whatever you perceive the other world or the eternal world to be, a thin place is a place where connection to that world seems effortless. An ethereal sign of its existence are almost palpable. So we'll go ahead and we'll run the first clip in the video. And these are some like what you would consider thin spaces or thin places, where one might feel that the next world is very close. You can feel it, but you don't see it. So Mahatma Gandhi, in his spiritual message to the world in 1931, speaks of this. There is an undefiable, mysterious power that pervades everything. I feel it, though I do not see it. It is the unseen power that makes itself felt, yet defines all proof because it is so unlike all I perceive through my senses. It transcends the senses. Now, these particular pictures right here, how do they make you feel? And we can stop when we hit the red spot, Oz. How do they make you feel? Do you feel that those may be perceived as thin spaces? Now, we can go ahead and run the video, the next video here in just a minute. And this, again, is where I'm going to need your participation. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop up the comments here in a moment. But we're going to run through these pictures. And we can go ahead and start. And use your emotion. How do these make you feel? And put it down in the comments. There's no wrong answer. How do these pictures make you feel? Do they make you feel afraid? Or do they make you feel some sort of nostalgia? And for some, they don't feel anything at all. Whereas one picture may, speak to one person, another one does not. And I'm seeing comments in the comments, so we're going to go through those here in just a moment. All right, so let's take a look at the comments real quick and see what people have to say. Because like I said, there's no wrong answers to these. Hi, Dustin. All right, let's see. And so to start off with our thin spaces that we were talking about, Akash states the beautiful locations are just amazing. They are. Now, Maud says on Psychomantium 13 that some of those pictures make them feel trapped. Nadine says occupied. Again, another Maud says others make me feel like it's too open. Ange says trapped. Joshua says it gives them gas. So I don't know if that's a positive thing, like nostalgia, or if that makes them afraid. We're not sure. Another Maud says Harry Potter. Nadine said, it's making my ears ring. And then Ange says, some are open. All right, so what you may have noticed that there are certain places or states of being in which you feel different, off, or uncomfortable. Often these uncomfortable spaces turn out to be what is called liminal spaces. This aesthetic known as liminal spaces is a location which is a transition between two other locations or states of being. Probably something you've never really paid attention to on a conscious level. Your subconscious picks up on these liminal spaces a lot. Typically, these are abandoned and oftentimes empty. A mall at 4 a.m. or a school hallway during summer, for example. This makes it feel frozen and slightly unsettling, but also familiar in our minds. A liminal space is the time between what was and what is next. Liminal spaces have liminality. It's a concept borrowed from social anthropology. The word lemon, not lemon, but lemon, meaning, in all essence, threshold in Latin. Now, in some primitive cultures, there are rites of passage to mark the transition of people from one state to another. For instance, transitioning from childhood to adulthood, or from being unmarried to being married, are accompanied by elaborate rites of passage in such cultures. Other types of liminal states of being, again, could be adolescence, they could be divorce, they could be moving, they could be a job change, and personally, I would say probably 2020 was a liminal year. Now, liminal spaces can be physical, psychological, temporal, cultural, conceptual, political, or a combination of all of these. Liminal spaces, such as a waiting room, parking lots, gas stations, stairwells, elevators, and rest stops, are classic examples of liminal spaces. And we know what happened to Alyssa Lamb in that elevator, which kind of just adds a whole nother layer of creep. Now, their existence is not about themselves. Beyond the place you're coming from and or going to, the liminal space isn't really meant to be its own entity. So you feel weird, and the space feels odd if you spend too much time or think too much about them, and often borderline the uncanny. And we're going to get into the uncanny here in just a moment. Your brain tells you that something's wrong because you're supposed to continue moving on with life, but you're not. So it feels like reality is altered. So in essence, a liminal space exists to move us from one state of being or existence to another state of being or existence. Humans don't normally stay or reside in these spaces. We move through them. So now that I've gone over the definition and the explanation, what would be your number one idea of a liminal space? And I want to take kind of a consensus in the chat. What would you consider the number one location as a liminal space? And many of us have used it. So I'm going to open up the chats again and let's see what everybody has to say. And Akasa, she actually understands the ringing ears part. It happens to her a lot, or to Nadine a lot. And then Nadine says, these places have attachment because many souls have passed through there. Yeah, and you can really get into like the whole conception that we were talking about with Resurrection Mary, with like natural made ley lines and man-made ley lines through energy, because they're lines of energy. Absolutely. That's the reason roads, and I'm kind of go off on a tangent a little bit here, but roads are considered both a liminal space, and depending on the age of the road, they often can follow footpaths of like Native American, or, you know, depending on where you're at in the world. So they could actually even lay on ley lines, and ley lines have a lot of connection with spiritual activity, paranormal activity. Lots of weird things happen on ley lines. So it's kind of like a double whammy. Ange says the Paris catacombs. Yeah. Nadine says, I pointed out a building with Underground Railroad in it. I'd never been there before. Turns out I was right. Well, and we're going to get into that too, Nadine. And then Maud says, the crossroads near Glenville here is definitely a liminal location. And then the other Maud says, that's when I got the, oh, I'm sorry, say Maud, that's when I got the crossroads penny. Nice. All right, so for me, and for what little bit of information that I could find out there concerning liminal spaces that doesn't completely go off into like copy paste, you know, creepypasta, would be airports. Airports would be, in my mind, one of your number one ideal areas of liminal space. They're used to pass through from one state of being to another. Nobody really lives there. I mean, not unless they have a task. You're not there for long periods of time unless you're either moving from one state of existence to another, or you're working there. But it's definitely not someplace that you would reside. And that's the thing about liminal spaces, especially for some of our people out there that may work and do like night shifts and things like that. Usually you're fine as long as you have a task, because things are still moving forward in what we consider like a linear time. But as soon, if you notice, as soon as your tasks are done, the area, if you or just one other person are there, tends to make you feel very uncomfortable, edgy, and almost, like I said, an uncomfortable nostalgia, if that makes any sense. So now that I have you guys sufficiently kind of creeped out about it, now let's talk about someone who went to a liminal space and disappeared. Now, some of this information comes from news.com.au/travel. Now, hundreds go missing at airports around the world every year, but most of those cases are resolved quickly, with the suspect usually being found safe. Usually the lost person ends up missing their flight or simply changes their plans without telling anyone. And in the meantime, their loved ones basically are calling in the cavalry. A handful of others, however, disappear in more sinister circumstances. The most baffling is that of Lars Mittank. He was a 28-year-old tourist who disappeared in Bulgaria in 2014. Now, the chilling CCTV footage released by airport authorities has haunted the internet ever since, earning this case countless threads and forums populated by sleuths determined to figure out what happened to him. Lars Mittank, 28, like I said, tourist, vanished from the Varna airport in Bulgaria on July of 2014. Now, on June 30th of 2014, Mr. Mittank and a group of mates flew from Berlin to Bulgaria for what was meant to be a month-long holiday. Their destination was the Golden Sands, the Bulgarian equivalent of kind of like Cancun or something like that, which has become increasingly popular among young European tourists looking for a cheap party town. Now, in the first week of their stay, Mr. Mittank hurt his ear after getting caught up in a beach brawl between rival football team supporters. He sought medical attention for his injury, which turned out to be more serious than he realized. He had a possibly ruptured eardrum. Now, despite his discomfort, Mr. Mittank reportedly partied up a storm for the rest of the holiday. When it came time for the group to fly out, the doctor told him his ear was injured and not sufficiently healed to fly safely and recommended that he stay on a few more days. Mr. Mittank rented a cheap room in the city, opting to stay on along with as his other friends flew home. Now, this is where things get weird. On his first night alone, the young traveler made a panicked call to his mother in Germany, claiming he was being followed by 4 men and that he feared for his life. That same night, he booked a flight home for the following day with plans to check in with the doctor at the Varna airport before boarding his flight. According to witness statements and airport CCTV footage, Mrs. Mittank Mr. Mittank is captured entering the airport and calmly walking through the building, luggage in tow. Shortly after arriving, he visited the airport clinic. The doctor later told police that the German, who still had his suitcase with him, seemed fine for the first few minutes of the consultation. This changed, though, when a person described as someone basically looking like a construction worker walked into the clinic, and Mr. Mittank suddenly freaked and ran out. He was captured on camera bolting through the airport, minus his bags, and out through the entrance into the car park area. Once outside the airport, he was seen climbing a fence rather quickly, almost inhumanly quickly, and then running into a wooded area. He has never been seen again. And if we can roll the next video. And this is Mr. Mittank. And you'll see him in the little circle thing. He comes out, goes through the car park. And now this fence supposedly is a 8-foot fence. And that's the last anyone has ever seen of him. Now, about a year later, a Bulgarian truck driver came forward to report having picked up a disheveled-looking hitchhiker some months earlier. He had since seen missing person posters put out by police, and now, or at that time, believed the man he picked up could have been Lars Mittank. Police were unable to track down the man, and Mr. Mittank remains missing. His family still believes he's out there and injured, possibly having lost his memory, and has set up a website for people to report sightings of him if you happen to see him. Now, this next story is about a Jennifer Markham, 25. She was an exotic dancer, vanished from the Denver International Airport, Colorado, in February of 2003. Jennifer Markham was working as a nightclub dancer when she vanished from the Pena Boulevard outside Denver International Airport sometime between 11 a.m. and midday on February 17th of 2003. According to Missing Persons website, the Charlie Project, which is a really neat website if you haven't ever checked out the Charlie Project. The 25-year-old old brown four-door 1999 Saturn was later found abandoned in a remote spot in the airport's car park. Miss Markham has not been seen or heard of since. Her mobile phone has not been used, and there is no evidence she took a flight. On the morning of her disappearance, Mrs. Markham went to see her boyfriend, a gentleman by the name of Stephen Ennis, in jail. Ennis was being held in a federal detention center awaiting a trial on charges of running an ecstasy distribution ring. Miss Markham was listed as a potential defense witness in his case and visited him often and told a friend she wanted to marry him. The last phone call she ever made was to Ennis. She told him she loved him and would see him in 3 days. That was the last time Ennis has ever heard her voice. From the outset, police suspect Miss Markham may have been murdered, possibly in connection with her boyfriend's case. Over the years, a suspect emerged, a man named Scott Kimball, who had once shared a cell with Ennis and had gotten to know Mrs. Markham well during her frequent visits. Now, in January of 2003, Kimball had been granted early parole and placed on supervised release, during which time he worked as an FBI informant. While he was free, however, police noticed that people close to him started to go missing or turning up dead, which is always a bad sign. Under questioning, Kimball told police an associate of Ennis had murdered Mrs. Markham, but then withdrew the story. In 2009, he pleaded guilty to the murders of Caius McLeod, 19, and Leanne Emery, 24, Miss Markham, and his own uncle, Terry Kimball, age 60. All of the victims' remains have been recovered except for those of Miss Markham. Kimball was convicted of 4 murders and sentenced to 70 years in jail, but a question mark continues to hang over his involvement in the disappearance of Miss Markham, who still remains missing to this day. Now, our last one, it concerns a Sierra Shields, 30. She was a flight attendant. She vanished from the LaGuardia Airport, New York, in January of 2016. And Mark says it was the one-armed man. Oh my Lord, it's been a long time since I've heard that one. Now, Sierra Shields was a flight attendant for United Airlines and Delta Airlines, who mysteriously vanished from New York's LaGuardia Airport on January 14th of, 2016. Mrs. Shields had been scheduled to work on a flight that day, but at the last minute had called a meeting with her supervisor and had quit her job. She has not been seen since. Her family believes she left the airport on foot, possibly still wearing her uniform, which resembled a blue dress, and has set up a Facebook page, or they have set up a Facebook page dedicated to finding out what happened to her. Now, according to friends, she did not have a boyfriend at the time and no known enemies. However, the supervisor who saw her last told police Miss Shields seems as if she had something on her mind but didn't appear distressed or depressed. Intriguing, in the week leading up to her disappearance, her roommate had noticed some subtle changes as far as her personality and what was going on with her, according to her father, Chris Shields. Her phone and wallet were later found at her apartment in Estonia, Queens, leading the roommate to conclude she must have left in a hurry and accidentally forgotten to take her things. It is unclear whether Miss Shields had returned home after she left the airport. She didn't appear to be depressed or anything, but something was on her mind, Mr. Shields told the New York Post. They know she came out of the airport doors, but they don't know what happened after that. And those are 3 stories of people who went to liminal spaces and never returned. So let's see what's going on in the comments real quick, and then we're going to take a commercial break. So let's see what's going on here. Kimball. All right, let's get back to where I was. All right, let's see, where was I? And Ange says, what about subways? Yes, there is actually, wasn't there a scene in Werewolf in London where the guy was walking through the tube late at night by himself? Things like that are creepy, but subways are absolutely liminal spaces. Anything that moves you from one space to the next. And arguably, gas stations are. That's the reason I think that gas stations feel so creepy when it's late at night and you have to stop for gas and there's not many people out. They feel off. So yeah, absolutely. Hi, Raven! The Count Saint Germain! The Germans got him, as Turkish from Snatch might say. And then Ma says, what was on that fence? My understanding is that he just bolted over that fence like super quick, which just seems odd. And then Rootsbleed Red says, this is a fun subject. It is. And you're not going to find a lot out there other than some of the creepypastas. And then you start getting into more of like psychology stuff. There's very limited information. And then Nadine says the Denver airport is full of satanic imagery. No wonder she went missing. It's cursed. And then Ange says gas stations remind me of the movie Carpetbagger. I don't think I ever saw that. But yeah, there's a lot of spaces, Nadine, that are considered cursed. You know, and again, I don't poo-poo anything. You know, I think human beings have gotten a little bit too full of themselves, and we think we know everything, and we really don't. We really, really don't. All right, so let's go ahead and go to a commercial break, and then we're going to get into kind of the definition and what the uncanny is, because it's actually a thing.
This is Mikey from Out of the Ordinary, and you're watching PBDC TV.
Oh, hi! First thing in the morning, when I'm listening to music and getting a little bit of time for some creepy research, I'm always representing with my PBDC merch. What a better way to have a cup of coffee in the morning.
Don't forget to check out our other cool merch at rootsbleedred.com. That's rootsbleedred.com.
This is Professor Edgar Fluffosaurus from Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, and when I'm not hosting Monster Chat or knocking down small Japanese cities, I'm watching PBDC TV. Now back to the show.
And we're back. All right, and don't go anywhere because I'm going to need some more viewer participation here in a minute. And some of this might get a little weird. So, all right, so the uncanny. The uncanny is the psychological experience of something that is strangely familiar rather than simply mysterious. It may describe incidences where a familiar thing or event is encountered, but it's encountered in an unsettling, eerie, or taboo content. The uncanny bends elements of the familiar and the unfamiliar, the revealed and the concealed, until the result makes us feel uncomfortable, uncertain, and ill at ease. Indeed, and we're going to bring up, yes, Freud. Freud intimately defines the uncanny as that class of the terrifying which leads back to something long known to us, once familiar. Or it could be seen as the paradoxical nature of being attracted to something, yet repulsed by it at the same time. Now, we're going to show you a video here in just a moment. But I think probably one of the best directors that has been able to encompass the uncanny and the liminal spaces or thin spaces in a visual way would be, and we'll go ahead and run this video, and I think everybody will be familiar. Will be David Lynch. Now, a good interpretation or visual of these liminal spaces and the uncanny can be seen not only in his movie Blue Velvet, but also seen in his 1990 series Twin Peaks. Interaction with the uncanny are not that uncommon, however. Now, how many here have had reoccurring dreams of what we consider, quote unquote, the terrifying which leads back to something long known to us, once very familiar? You dream of a place you've never been, but it seems oddly odd, yet once familiar. It's not as uncommon as people would think. So let's do this. If you have ever had or still have a reoccurring dream of a place that makes it kind of fits this content, like it's kind of like a safe place, it's oddly familiar, but it feels at the same time odd, off, or makes you feel somewhat uneasy. I know I do. Mine's a cemetery on a hill, and the light is usually it's like a setting sun, but it's green. And I've found myself there numerous times, more than I could count on two hands in my lifetime. Same place. It's always a little bit different, but I feel safe there, yet it's very unnerving. So if you do too, let us know what it is. Ange says abandoned amusement parks are liminal spaces. You're absolutely right. And then Akash says, I have a dream that starts off as a house where it feels safe. It's my old house. And then it goes all Silent Hill on me. And then Nadine says, I get dream deja vu, dreaming of a place, but I experience it later. See, and there's a lot of people that do that as well, Nadine. But for the, and that, I think that would fall into like what we're talking about now too, because a lot of these concepts haven't really been given names yet. You know, it's something I think all of us have probably experienced. But for whatever reason, there's just not a lot of information out there on it. And the really neat thing is with these particular dream spots or safe spots or beginning spots. Now they're not necessarily considered liminal spaces, but they are in a sense too. So they kind of fall into this category. But a lot of people do report having dream deja vu as well. And we're going to go into that with like some of the locations too. Like there are people that have had these reoccurring dreams of a location that they've never been to before that seems very familiar. And then years later find out that the place actually exists. So I think that's like kind of sends like the hairs on the back of your neck up just a little bit. And then Maud says that happens to me as well. Joshua says an old school gymnasium. And yes, I would imagine it does stop you in your tracks. I imagine it does, Nadine. Absolutely. All right, so many theories exist on this. Okay, what we're just talking about here. From simulation theory, which we're not going to get into tonight. That's a completely different theory. It could be altered dimensions, shared experiences, like what I call the world or the ethereal mind, past lives, to what came before. It could be what came before we were born. If energy never dies, it could have been a liminal space of where we were before we moved into this existence. That's what some people think as well, which again could be conceived as a transitional space or a liminal space, to even a reality shift, where liminal spaces are a bit out of step with time, as one would find themselves standing on the threshold of two realities. Time doesn't move right and things don't change. Now, that's when we start getting into like liminal dreaming. Now, liminal dreaming is, and there's a lot of thoughts on this. Liminal dreaming is when you're not awake, but you haven't hit that deep sleep yet. You kind of go back and forth. You might hear something and you're not sure if you heard that in your mind or if you heard it for real. That's your liminal dreaming stage. Now, some people theorize that these familiar spaces only exist in the dream world, and that when we sleep, we are actually visiting other realities or world when these particular types of dreams occur, which can take place in liminal dreaming. There's a lot of people that believe too with liminal dreaming, you might experience a reality shift. The theory of shared experiences or past lives is sometimes attributed to the visual reaction to a picture of a certain place or places that seem familiar, but you have never been. Now, there's another word for this as well. It's called Verwin. It's a German word that literally translates to far sickness. Maybe you have been there. Maybe you still are there, just not in this part of time. There's a longing in all of us for places, people, and things that aren't what we know, but are deeply familiar. And this is a quote by Judith Thurman. Every dreamer knows that it is entirely possible to be homesick for a place you have never been to, perhaps more homesick than for the familiar ground. Now, as far as liminal spaces are concerned, From a psychological point of view, liminal space emotional reactions can sometimes be seen as a subconscious representation of feeling stuck or needing to address something that is being avoided. Or, in some psychological circles, it can be viewed as a place of creativity. So, for all my creatives out there, and I haven't tried this yet because I haven't recently hit a creative block, but try viewing some liminal space photos if you hit that block, and see if it works. Because that there, some people believe that those can kind of re-energize or bump your creativity because you're at the threshold of something. So again, try that if you hit a like a writer's block or a creative block. But whatever you do, stay out of the back rooms. Now, sometimes, clearly, liminal spaces can be quite positive, but the back rooms are not that kind of space. Have you ever found yourself in a windowless room illuminated by fluorescent lights? Perhaps the room had nothing in it except for a musty smell and some faded yellowish carpet. If any of this sounds familiar, you may have stumbled upon the back rooms. Now, there is some creepypasta out there, but I'm going to show you how I connect this. Now, perhaps what makes the back rooms so eerie, so dark, and so claustrophobic is the idea that one might be stuck in a liminal space forever, trapped in a place designed to be both ethereal and impermanent. Like being trapped in a child's mind despite being an adult, or like being faced to spend the night in an airport. There's a definite feeling of helplessness to the concept of the back rooms, a deer in the headlights stagnicity that comes from the feeling of being trapped in a place you never should have been at in the first place. This describes the back rooms perfectly. They are spaces that are once full of life, but in their eerie reemergence in some bleak parallel dimension, it seems certain that something awful has happened here, something traumatic and unthinkable, something that could easily manifest as a monstrous entity in more imaginative minds. Now, to kind of look at Hollywood in this and to kind of relate it to the back rooms and kind of what I think the back rooms actually could represent, we're going to go way back to the Lango Liners. Did anybody ever see? It's a Stephen King short story, but they did like a mini series on it. I believe it was back in the 90s or early 2000s, somewhere around there. I think it was the 90s. Anyway, the Lango Liners, for those that may not remember or have never seen it, during a red-eye flight of a Lockheed L-1011 from Los Angeles International Airport to Boston Logan International Airport, the plane flies through a strange light, and most of the passengers and flight crew disappear, leaving behind only personal effects. Only those passengers who were asleep remained and discover the predicament they are in when they awake. Now, pilot Brian Engel, deadheading on the flight, takes the controls. Unable to contact any other airport, he decides to land the plane in Bangor International Airport because of its long runway and lighter traffic level. And everything always with Stephen King seems to take place in Bangor. Now, when they land in Bangor, the airport seems deserted and without any power. They also discover that everything is dull and lifeless. They cannot light matches, and food and drink are tasteless. Brian fears the jet fuel will lack any ability to move the plane. Now, another character by the name of Diana, I guess, also reports hearing a strange sound in the distance. Now, another character, Bob, states that they passed through an aurora borealis and entered a time rift. sending them a few minutes into the past and out of sync with time. Now, Diana warns them the noises in the distance are getting louder. Part of the group discovers a pocket of the present on board the plane, and objects brought aboard from the airport regain their normal behavior in these areas. The group determine they can refuel and take off, heading for the time rift and hopefully returning to normal time. As they board, the group witnesses strange creatures emerging from the horizon, consuming everything, including the ground. Bob calls the creatures Langoliers, creatures that feed on time which has passed. Now we can go ahead and run our last video to kind of give you a visual of the Backrooms. The Backrooms, as we know them, were born as a creepypasta post on Chan 4 or 4chan. On May 12th of 2019, an anonymous user posted an image of an empty room with yellowish carpet and asked people to share photos of places that just felt off. Then another user commented, "If you're not careful and you no clip," which is kind of just like a modern version of get out of sync with reality, in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, and the endless background noise of fluorescent light at maximum humbuzz. And approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in forever. God save you if you hear something wandering about, because it sure as hell has heard you. Now, my interpretation of this would, from a psychological standpoint, and maybe from a metaphysical standpoint, is could the back rooms basically just be a modern representation of the void, or the call of the void? I'm gonna leave that for you guys to decide. And I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, a lot of this came out of my own brain because, like, well, most of it always does, but like this was super hard to put together because there's not a lot of information at all on this. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to look at the comments real quick, and then I will bid you a pleasant nightmare. See where I was. All right, and then Maud says, I have a dream that I have had since I was a kid. I'm pretty sure it's how I died in a past life. There's so many questions with that, you know, so many questions. And then Ange says she had a funny dream while I was walking home. I was being chased by gremlins. Oh my goodness. And then Liz says, I'm going to have to try that. I have hit a creative block with art lately. Try it. I mean, I understand where they're getting this idea or concept with the liminal visuals, that sometimes they can kind of help kind of give you a jump start on your creativity. And then Maud says, this sounds like the elevator game. Well, you know, an elevator is liminal space. And then Joshua says, what the fuck? And then Maud is like, it's like when you are in a hospital wing and it's dead silent. Yes. And if you're like I am, anytime I have to go to the hospital to visit someone, and I will be like looking for, like, there's some hospitals that are just laid out really strange. I'm sorry, they are. And sometimes in these hospitals, you'll find the cafeteria in really odd spots. And in this particular hospital, it was an old hospital. It was really super old. Like they had just like taken the old hospital that had been there like since God knows when, at least the 50s. You could tell from the tile. And it just kind of built onto it and built onto it and built onto it until like it was this just like crazy mishmash of like time periods, and it just turned into a maze. Well, the cafeteria was in the basement. So if you go one way, you get to the cafeteria. If you go the other way, you'll find yourself at the morgue. And it's the old part with like the old off green, creepy tile. And well, of course, that's where I found myself. And the halls, the way they turn in those old hospitals, it makes you feel like you're being followed. It is so super creepy. But yes, you're absolutely right, Maud. In hospitals. Oh no, Josh's tablet is dying. And then Nadine says, I hated the Langoliers. Yes, it was a 90s made-for-TV movie. I think it was like a mini series or something. And then Ange says, are those the black creatures? Are you asking from a creepypasta point of view, or are you asking from like shadow people point of view? And then Maud says it looked like blood on the ceiling. And Josh says, Song of Afflictions and Woe. And Ange says, I thought it was funny when they chased that one guy who wouldn't stop screaming. And Josh says, heed the call of the Raven's call. And then Josh says, University of Mississippi Medical Center. I imagine, yes. Hi, Sykes, how are you? And then Ange says, in the movie. I don't know. Is that a good answer? I don't know. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun putting this together, and I've really been wanting to I've been wanting to cover this, but I couldn't really, like, I understood in my brain what I was trying to say, but I couldn't really put it down on paper. It's just taken a really long time. So I'm glad that's out of there. That's out of there and on paper now. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Again, the most support that you can give us, because we truly, truly appreciate you guys, is sharing our content. Of course, if you would like to help further, you can also go on our website and buy us a coffee through Ko-Fi at our coffee bar. Also want to remind everybody, we've got some submissions already. So if you're wanting to get your either personal, like creepy personal experience, ghost experience, weird experience, a favorite ghost story, maybe an author that has a short ghost story that you've just really loved for a really long time, submit it to us before the 15th. That would be submitted to pbunnydc@gmail.com. You can find the link and everything up on both of the websites for our Victorian Masquerade Christmas feed. So, and Christmas was actually, the time when scary ghost stories would be told. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring back that old tradition, and we've got a special guest that may pop up sometime between now and Christmas. Super special guest. So you better be behaving. That's all I got to say. So keep a lookout for that as well. But yeah, if you want to have your story read on our Victorian Masquerade stream, ghost story stream, go ahead and get those submitted to us. Cutoff date is the 15th of December. If I didn't give you a date, it's the 15th of December. And then also remember that both I and Mr. Ghoul and some of the other content creators will not be here next weekend because we are flying out on Friday to the home office in Transylvania for our annual creature conference. So, but the Bunnies of Chaos will remain. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they will be bringing you a special holiday presentation. So that will be fun. That will be
The Bunnies of Chaos are coming for you. The Bunnies of Chaos are coming for you.
Good morning!
Now, see, I shouldn't have said it so loud. They already think they're in control. They already think they're in control. So again, I hope that some of Steve's staff is staying behind, because God knows what we're going to come back to when we return on Monday. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be chaos. So I hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving and just completely veg out from the tetrafan. Anyway, eat your turkeys, get sleepy, watch football, whatever it is you do. But happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And we will see you next time. Pleasant nightmares, everybody. Bye.
I don't know the world.